The Florida Podcast Network, the voice of Florida.
From Mallory Square in Key West to the Governor's Mansion in Tallahassee and all points beyond, you're listening to the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com, your source for all things related to the craft beer community in the Sunshine State. And now your host, Dave Butler.
Welcome to episode 64 of the Florida Beer Podcast, powered by FloridaBeerBlog.com. This is Dave, your host and author. We got a couple things to get to today. Before we do, make sure to like us, subscribe to our podcast, rate us 5 stars, make sure that all of your friends know. You can also find us online at FloridaBeerBlog.com, at FloridaBeerPodcast.com, as we were a proud member of the Florida Podcast Network. On socials, at Florida Beer Blog on Instagram and Twitter, at FL Beer Blog on Facebook. And if you've been watching those socials, you'll know that I'm a particularly big fan of Curtain Up. That is a beer that was founded by the Happy Hour Guys, which is a podcast based out of New York by a couple of actors that are currently not doing what they want to do, and a collaboration between them and Gun Hill Brewing, which is in the Bronx. They've collaborated with them before for a special beer that's actually served if you go see Hamilton at the Richard Rodgers Theater in New York City. Obviously, they are dark right now. But the beer was intended to not only bring awareness to what the current quarantine has done to the performing arts community in New York and abroad, but also as a way to give funds to the Actors Fund, which is a group that supports performers and technicians and everybody involved with the arts as they are not able to do their jobs at the present time. There are 3 breweries in the state that are jumping on to brew Curtain Up at the present time, and the first one is Bay Cannon out of West Tampa. We've had them on the podcast before, and today you're going to be listening to co-founder Matthew Juaire. He was able to connect with me via Zoom to talk a little bit more about why they decided to make this beer, where the proceeds are going, and what they learned from such an interesting recipe. Enjoy. First of all, how did you find out about the Curtain Up project?
I don't know. Maybe somebody tagged us somewhere online. I'm not really sure exactly. I suppose it's possible that those guys reached out to us, the Happy Hour guys or Gun Hill, but I can't remember. We've been talking for a while now, so I'm not sure exactly how the communication started. But I brought it to our one of my partners and the head brewer, Joe, who's a musician and an artist, and asked if he had appetite for it and if we had room for that from a production standpoint. For a while, we were really, really jammed up making Xander. Just was clogging up our production, so it was tough through the middle of COVID to get on board with a lot of extra creative stuff, and we're starting to get back on top of the water with that. But this became a time that we could do it, plus it's Tampa Bay Beer Week, and so we just sort of scheduled it when we could and are happy to be able to participate.
Awesome. And I know, especially from speaking to other breweries, that there are a lot of projects like this. Obviously Resilience kind of kicked it off, and then there's been all sorts of other ones like Black is Beautiful and so on and so forth. What was it specifically about Curtain Up that spoke to you? Was it the recipe or the meaning behind it?
No, I mean, a recipe helps because we do a good job with hazy IPAs and have some footing there despite our youth. But I think for the most part, I brought it up to Joe just because he's a live performer. He's participated in playing in bands for years, successful little run with one back in the punk rock days, and toured Europe and learned a lot about, beer, which has obviously become his his passion and career, and but still plays. And many times we've discussed just the destruction to live entertainment, because we've had live shows here and tried to do different things. It's just been hard to manage that with the different policies and safety measures and whatnot that you want to try to, wrap your business around. And so it just kind of made sense for us to try to help do this. And we don't have a lot of money. So the idea that we can make a beer that we can sell and continue to make money, but then also, sell it for a little bit more and give back, that creates an opportunity for us to participate even without having, much revenue, because we know it's hazy IPAs will sell, and it'll be a beautiful beer and taste good.
Yeah, especially with the recipe, because, like you said, the recipe is available for anybody that wants to see it and for participating breweries that want to brew it. And I noticed that it was very heavy on Citra. I do believe there was a good chunk of Mosaic that was in there as well. Did you decide to kind of stick exactly with the recipe that Gun Hill created, or were there little twists and tweaks there that you made it kind of Bay Cannon's own little version?
We just stuck with the recipe. What's cool is that we're always learning. We're always figuring out what different tweaks and whatnot in recipes that we currently have. And so seeing that recipe and it being a hazy was something that we were interested in using, just because it was a little bit different than what we've been doing, to see what that comes out looking like. And also its aromas and profile, it was hopped a little bit differently than how we do it. So it was cool to just use it the way it was and see how it comes out and see what we think. Yeah, it's Centennial, Citra, Amarillo, I think. Just it's not something that we've done with those hops matching up. So wanted to just follow the recipe and see what we could put together. It'll be different than what we're doing. And so since we have hazies on the menu, it's nice to have something a little bit different.
Awesome. Based on your experience brewing this, do you think that it will be the starting point for making a few other beers that you want to put in rotation?
Like, what do you mean?
Just different recipes, different ways of playing with some of the hops, kind of like you had mentioned.
That's all that we really do. Everything we do is something new and different. So, we're just a 7-barrel brewery. Most of the stuff that we do here is R&D, and if we can get some of it out to distribution to get some feedback on that, we have relationships with a contract facility. So that's where Xander gets made. We've got some other beers that'll be getting made there. And if we find something that really works that we want to go large scale with, then we'll take it out over there. But we use this brewery as a pilot for the most part. So everything is always different. We're always messing with different ideas. Joe is always coming up with improvements for recipes, new recipes, sometimes really, really old recipes, because, traditional Belgian beers are great. Nowadays, traditional West Coast IPA are old and but also great. So yeah, we just kind of mess around. And at the tap room, you got to have every box covered. You want to have dark beers, you want to have sour beers, you want to have hazy beers, you want to have bitter beers. So we got to continue to mix it up, and he does a good job doing that.
Perfect. Obviously, with Gun Hill and the Happy Hour guys, they kind of had the Actors Fund as the main beneficiary for their beers. Are you going to be donating some of the proceeds to the Actors Fund, or is there something local in town that you're going to try and give funds to? We
just plan to give it to the Actors Fund. That was part of the program that when we read it, and just wanted to participate that way. We got involved. We got Hooch and Hive involved too. They're a little bar over here by us, and so they're going to buy a keg through our distributor, and then they're going to sell it, and they're going to donate some of the proceeds there too. I know they do a ton of live shows, and that's really part of who they are. And so we have beer there usually, and they're good people, and so we just reached out, see if they wanted to participate. And so I believe next week they'll get that beer and kind of help. It's like we only did 20 cases. We're just not a big brewery. We want it to move. We want to sell and make some money. We'll donate some proceeds off of draft sales as well, and then have it go to the Actors Fund. I've read up a little bit about it, and trust that it'll get to who it needs to get to. I haven't been able to do any research or been approached by anybody locally. So
Awesome. And so 4-packs are coming on sale. I would assume 4-packs and 16-ounce tall boys. What's the price point and where can people get it?
Yeah, 4-packs, $24. They're right here in the tap room. $6 every 4-pack goes back to the Extras Fund. We'll be selling draft beer too, and a buck off of every pint will go back as well.
Awesome. Matthew, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
You got it. See everybody here, West Tampa on Main Street.
Hey there, fellow Florida beer enthusiast. We now have an official Patreon. In case you are unfamiliar, Patreon is a great way for a community to support the creators of the content you love, like the Florida Beer Podcast. If you're enjoying the content we bring you on this show or any of the shows on the Florida Podcast Network, you can help ensure that content keeps coming through for a small monthly donation equal to the price of a couple cups of coffee a month. So for just a few lattes, you can make a real difference. And the first goal of FPN's Patreon program is to help me get a better mobile setup to use whenever I can start traveling to great breweries here in the state of Florida. So if today's episode brought you valuable insights and information, please help see that these episodes keep coming by becoming a patron. Head to patreon.com/Florida Podcast Network to support the show, and it comes with some pretty sweet benefits. Want access to bonus extras? Nostalgic for these old school radio shoutouts? Lover of good quality merchandise? Well, not only will your monthly contribution help me grow the show, but you'll get some cool stuff in return. So please head to patreon.com/Florida Podcast Network for further details to become a patron. That's Patreon, patreon.com/Florida Podcast Network. You can also find the link right there in the show notes or by visiting floridabeerpodcast.com. Thank you in advance for your continued support. Obviously, the interview that you just heard was recorded before they released, and by the time it comes out, they will have released the beers for their 4-packs for offsite consumption. He also mentioned a couple places where you can find it on draft. It's a very good recipe. It's a great, great organization that you're helping out and a very worthy cause, so I definitely recommend trying to search that out and get some. We will also be talking to the other breweries that are going to be making it once it comes closer to them releasing. But after that, we are going to head down to Naples, and I'm very excited because it was one of the first breweries that I was actually able to go to since the quarantine began. It's been quite a long time since I've actually been able to... Let me try that again. It's been quite a long time since I've been able to sit at a brewery and enjoy a beer, and I was lucky to have my family with me as we went to Riptide Brewing, which is in Naples. They've been around for a couple of years, but they have recently gotten new ownership, and with new ownership comes a whole new outlook, new imagery, new taproom location looks, new backyard area, which is where we work because there's plenty of space to sit outside and enjoy beers. Just new everything, and even new beer recipes are going to be coming on. And so we're talking to the co-owner, Kim West. She is the driving force behind all of that awesome newness, to talk about what it was like to take over a brewery that already existed, some of the plans that she put into motion, making the new Riptide, and what they're going to be doing. Let me try that again so there's no chime. And so we sat down and spoke to co-owner Kim West to learn a little bit more about the new hotness that is Riptide Brewing, the changes that she made, the changes that she wants to make, and really the new focus for this great brewery in Southwest Florida. Enjoy. Well, then I guess I will get started by asking the ownership structure, because it seems like Riptide has sort of changed hands a few times.
Well, it has. Initially, we purchased it from 3 partners, and when we initially purchased it, it was understood that my son, my oldest son, who's 26, was going to run it with a couple of his friends. Well, going to brewing school and learning how to brew and actually owning a brewery and having to do it evidently are 2 completely different things. So my son's friend that was the brewer, he started brewing less and less. And then one weekend he took a girl out to a social event, came back, had purchased a car, and decided to leave and go live on his cousin's couch in Beaufort, South Carolina, because he was going to marry this girl.
That's kind of Jerry Springer right there.
Yeah, it sort of is. And so he stayed there for quite some time, I understand, a few months, and nothing worked out with the girl, evidently. So now he's back home with his parents, and the girl is still single. And I think he's working in either a Nike or an Adidas warehouse stocking shoes.
So just like the traditional way of pets and everything, of course, the kid wants it. The kid doesn't take care of it, and it is up for the parents to take care of things from here on out.
So Chris, then, my son, COVID hit. So here's my son, who's 26, who doesn't have a lot of business experience. His brewer has just gone to live on someone's couch. And I decided to step in and help a little.
Awesome. And in that time, it seems like you've taken a brewery that was sort of a small brewery in a non-traditional market, and it looks like you've got a very aggressive, very forward-thinking vision.
Well, my background and everything I did prior to this, I always had forward-thinking 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plans. I don't like to be surprised. I like to be out ahead of everything.
Gotcha.
And that's the only way I know how to run a business. You go big or you go home. So we sat together for about 48 hours and decided we were going big.
Awesome. And obviously the first thing, the very obvious thing, even looking at social media and whatnot, something that we had talked about previously, is sort of the iconography, the image, not just the logo, but the whole feel of what Riptide was supposed to be. Because the original Riptide, the one that we've been to several times, my wife and our family and our friends, traditionally was, I guess the icon was kind of centered around either Poseidon or Neptune, whichever one you go with. A lot of golds, a lot of reds and browns, and now you're actually on the third iteration of the Riptide logo, but it's gone very whites and blues, very cool, very aquatic with the surfer. Now you've got the surfer with a pint of beer in his hand.
Right.
I guess, why was it so important to change that visual look of what it was? Why was that the first thing that you wanted to do?
Well, I think that realistically, before you start coming out with a bunch of different merchandise, a bunch of different beers, all of that, you need to have an idea of what your brand is. And when our second alliteration, when we left the brown and the gold and we moved into the surfer guy, this is Naples. People come here for the beach. Now, do people come here to surf? No. But the surfer guy was just kind of a nod to whimsy, because, like, I have penguins all around my house. Now, there's no reason in the world.
My wife is a huge penguin fan. She loves penguins.
I have outdoor penguins and indoor penguins. So, I mean, there's nothing penguin-y about Naples, but it's just, it's that whimsy, that fantasy. So looking at that and looking at, you look at beach colors. It's creams, the blues, the greens. It's got a lot of texture. It's very comfortable. That's what we wanted to go for. And as we started to go that direction, it then dawned on us that, hey, we really, really, we need to circle back. Okay, this guy should be drinking a beer, because the absolute epiphany of coming down here to surf would be if you're out there drinking a beer and surfing. And I was extremely lucky. I brought on Kyle, who is our head of sales and marketing. So there's a lot of things I don't know how to do, but I know how to find people that can do them and do them well.
Which is always the hallmark of a good owner. Not doing everything yourself, getting the people that can.
Oh, yeah, no. If I was doing everything myself, I can't even imagine what this would look like.
So we've got this visual change. And like I was saying before, this is a non-traditional beer market, but it's starting to really grab hold. It's starting to have teeth. It's starting to really sort of sink into. What kind of changes have you seen in the Lee County, Collier County beer scene since you've had Riptide, and how has the new image been able to sort of sink in and resonate with the beer drinkers in this area? That's a lot of question, I know.
That is a lot. I think that's a two-pronged question, because for people to really understand craft beer, you have to understand what craft beer is. And there's been a lot of mystery surrounding that because, as you know, some of the big beer houses, buy up breweries or rebrand under other names, and people think that they're drinking craft, but they're really not.
Exactly.
So you had education was the biggest piece. We started talking to everybody who came in, and everybody that we talked to about our beer, be it someone that we speak with in the tap room or someone that when we're out selling, or just talking to people when we're out and about town. We talk about why craft beer is craft beer, and that it's an artisan type of mentality versus, hey, we're making, 5 flagships and we're making these other 3 things. And that's what it is. Lyndon, who is our director of operations and our head brewmaster, he actually started here at Riptide Brewing and then went from here to Ankro Lab to help them open, and then went to Colorado and was going to his wife's family. They were going to go into partnership. They decided not to do that. And so we were lucky enough to convince him to come back. And so he's running all of our operations, and he's absolutely amazing.
Excellent. And it seems interesting because I was taking a look in terms of the beers that you have on tap. There are some beers that I remember from the old days. Obviously, Kraken double IPA is there, and it kind of seems like it will always be there.
No.
But it also looks, the Big Cypress Stout is another one that is kind of, I don't know if it's a holdover from the old days. With the refresh of the brand, with the refresh of the imagery, did he also come through with a refresh of the recipes?
He absolutely came through with a refresh. The reason that you still see Kraken on there is because right now, with what we're doing in terms of canning and making sure that our 3 main flagships are available to anyone that wants them, is we have a 10-barrel brew house, but essentially it's like a 7.5. So the new fun things that you see on there is a nod to what we're going to go forward with. The Kraken double IPA, you come in 3 months, it's not going to be there. Will we have a double IPA? Absolutely, but it'll be different.
Interesting. And I guess, especially with Naples, especially with the Southwest Florida beer community, it doesn't seem like it's overly crazy. It doesn't seem like it's overly desserty. I know you do have at least one fruited sour that's on the menu.
Right.
Is that intentional because of the market, or is that more of a, these are baby steps, and once you educate your clientele, eventually you'll start bringing those in?
As much as it pains me to say this, and I'll probably get hit for saying it, in Southwest Florida, we're a good 2 years behind the rest of the country in terms of what's going on in craft beer. So these are what I would consider, I don't know that I would consider them baby steps. I would consider them more educational steps, because the more that people understand craft beer and what goes into it and the different ways to pair it with food, then we'll be able to offer different selections, and we'll be able to go a little bit farther in terms of what you want to do. We want to do some really great, we actually had the barrel-aged golden. The second time that we do something like that, then we're going to put it in the larger 22 to 24 ounce bottles and put the wax on it, and it'll be a very special type of thing. More than likely a taproom only release the first time. We're not ready to do that yet because we need to be able to recreate it. If we do it once, we're not a one and done. We want to make sure that we can recreate it. We can recreate it exactly the way that it was, and that people understand what it is.
Awesome. And yeah, I was kind of going back to my original question because, Bonehook is really starting to explode.
They are.
They're all over the place. Momentum just had their huge new facility a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think they've only been in a year and a half.
Yeah, but it's enormous compared to the old one that they used to have.
It is, yes.
There's a lot of them that are opening. You mentioned Ankro Lab, that just opened. And then obviously there's other news that you had. I don't know if we're going to release that. But it seems like it's really starting to come into its own. And it seems like the 2 years behind, that the area is starting to catch up.
I would agree with that. I would say I think it still will lag behind for a few years, but I would definitely agree with that. I think that people are actually also starting to see breweries down in Southwest Florida as more of a multi-use space. We're having some wedding receptions here. People are starting to see them as something other than go in, have a beer, and leave.
And how would you kind of define the beer drinker down here? When you came on board about a year ago, did you have a clientele that was starting to develop that taste, that was starting to develop that sort of knowledge about craft beer? Or did you still have to do a lot of, I guess, from scratch education?
Actually, a lot of our beer drinkers or clientele did a lot of educating for us.
Interesting.
We have a very diversified here in 34102. We have, the 21-year-olds. We have the 91-year-olds. We have people that have never had a craft beer. We have a guy that comes in all the time, Gil. Gil, travels all over the world and has pitched his own hops, has grown his own hops. So it's kind of a meeting of the minds. Everybody, when they come in, it's sort of like a think tank. People share everything about where they've been, the type of beer they've had, different experiences that they've had in breweries and or attached to breweries.
Awesome. And we'll talk about experiences for a little bit, because as we're recording this, you do have an art installation on the inside of your tap room, which is absolutely gorgeous. I can't wait to go in there a little bit and just sort of browse and look around. In terms of the Naples clientele, do you get a lot of snowbirds? And when it comes to both the snowbirds and the locals, what are you trying to do to really kind of keep things fresh and interesting other than just rotating the taps?
That's a really interesting question, especially in 2021.
Well, yeah, I was going to actually talk about that a little bit later, because obviously that's the elephant in the room.
It is the elephant in the room. This season has been a very unique season. We've been very lucky that the changes that we've made and the different people that we have brought in have been able to keep it fresh and interesting. So we have managed to pick up quite a few more locals than we originally had. At the same time, we just have updated our website. We haven't actually even published that it's launched.
Interesting.
But it quietly launched about a week and a half ago, and we have over 1,000 people that have looked at it, have visited it, and they're from all over the country. We've got people from Alaska, we've got people from Washington State, we've got people from New York, and they're all interacting with it, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that it's hard to say, because this would have been, last year would have been the whole season, but we closed down right before St. Patrick's Day. Yeah. So, and this year, a lot of the snowbirds appear to be moving down permanently.
Really?
Yeah, there's a lot. We've got, I think it's about, I don't want to misquote, but I believe that the number is in the thousands per day of people moving to Southwest Florida, because, we're still open while many of the states up north are closed.
Interesting. I did not realize that. Is that putting a pressure on all of the businesses like yours here in the area?
Well, if that's what you call pressure, that's a great pressure to have. Come on down. Everybody bring the pressure. Not so far. It's just the only thing that it makes is it's more difficult to forecast. Is this seasonal? Are they going to stay? I don't think this year I can't speak to everybody, but I don't think that we necessarily have a huge handle on that. I would be willing to say that we're probably 30 to 40% off, whichever way we think.
Gotcha. Because
there's really no way to gauge it. This is also the first year that we're going out and actually advertising.
Okay.
We are, I think it's in a week. We have I don't know if you're familiar with Slider. It's the car that runs around and, it can pick you up. Yes, it can pick you up and take you where you want to go, and it's free. They just work for tips.
Interesting.
So we are on a Slider. We've wrapped a Slider with Riptide.
Interesting.
For a whole year.
Okay, it's kind of neat. I guess it's a lot more socially forward than you expect the area to be.
I think so. I mean, it's hard to say, having had no prior brewery experience before I came into this. It's kind of like sometimes you just throw some stuff at the wall and see if it sticks.
And I guess I was going to say, is this field sort of more ripe for experimentation like that? Is there something that's a little bit more forgiving and a little bit more risk-taking in the craft beer industry than, say, the other industries that you have been a part of?
I don't know if I'd call it risk-taking. I would say that it's more welcoming for change. So if you try something and it doesn't work, I don't think that is necessarily held against you as long as you try something else. And I think the end result being good customer service and a good product, I think they're very forgiving as to how you get there. As long as you check the boxes. I mean, we've worked very hard to try and be part of the community and support the community. We have a strong partnership with DAS, Domestic Animal Services. We have a strong partnership with the zoo. We do Brew for the Zoo every year, and we support the Panthers. Although this year, I think we're going to branch out and start supporting some other animals also with a limited can release.
Oh, really? Because
Yes.
I will say the first time that we were here, we actually came... Actually, no, we hadn't gone to the zoo yet, but we did notice, or at least I noticed, the one-eyed stuffed panther.
Yes.
Which led us to learn about the one-eyed panther that was at the Naples Zoo. So that sounds like that is still a partnership that
Yes,
you are
that is still a
continuing.
partnership. We all feel very strongly about giving back. My team, I probably shouldn't be the person here talking to you. My team should probably be talking to you because I've got Claire, our taproom manager, is amazing. Our other taproom manager, Christian, that does a lot of back-of-house stuff, I mean, I can't say enough good things about him. Kyle's our, media and sales guy. The people that we have out selling in the market are fabulous. Lyndon, I've already told you about. Mm-hmm. Ian, who just recently came on board, he's passionate about cider, which is what we're going to be adding to our line.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, cider's his big thing. So, I've just got great people. That's why it seems a little ridiculous for me to be sitting here and talking about, because this isn't a reflection of me. This is a reflection of everybody that works at Riptide.
Well, and I guess that's a good thing to hear because it doesn't seem like it's one person controlling. And I've spoken to other breweries where it seems like it's just the one person and nobody can sort of get out from the shadow of that one person, whereas it seems like you're more interested in hearing what your team has to say and what they're looking to do and sort of taking the ship in that direction.
The way that I've always looked at putting teams together is the person who puts the team together, they're responsible for the vision. And you hire people, and they're responsible for what you hire them for. So it makes no sense to me to hire like a taproom manager and then turn around and tell her what the taproom should be like. Or hire a brewer and say, okay, and these are like the 10 things I want you to make. No, there's no synergy in that.
It's kind of amazing and refreshing to hear.
Really?
Believe it or not, yes.
Well, trust
You're
me.
looking around kind of confused that somebody would actually believe the opposite of that. So,
Well, that's, like I said, that's the only way I know how to run a business. So that is how Riptide is currently being run. Nobody really has titles. We have group chat. If anybody has a great idea, they throw it out in group chat. If you need me to cover the floor or wash the bathroom, I'm fine.
gotcha. That's
It doesn't matter.
And I guess my question, because we're sitting outdoors, it's an absolutely gorgeous night in your absolutely gorgeous sort of beer garden. Whose idea was this and kind of making this sort of come to fruition?
I guess this would be, again, I think I love plants and I like outdoor space. Claire is absolutely crazy about plants. So Claire took me to a place called Williams Magical Gardens.
Okay.
Okay, and we met. It's also women-owned. Cheryl owns it. So we met Tina and Cheryl there. So all of a sudden we had this beautiful partnership. Well, then Christian feels strongly about how space should go. Lyndon knows which of the components that we keep outside make a lot of noise. And so how were we going to break that off and look good? And how could we make it look good? But it's a very small beer garden, so you also have to worry about, when someone comes to deliver gas or somebody comes to pick up beer, we can't have it look like this because they can't get through. So everything's on wheels.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm
Yes.
taking a look at it. You've got
Our
some gorgeous
pergolas are even
partition.
on wheels.
Interesting.
So if we had to, and
Oh.
most of the planters on wheels, not all, but most. So if we had to, we could move everything out of the way.
Huh. That's funny.
So that's
really
yeah.
funny.
Did I forget? Oh, Kyle, of course, had some great ideas. It was Kyle's idea for, I think it was Kyle and Claire, or maybe Kyle and Christian, for the art installation that went with that. So, no, I mean, there is, like I said, there's, if anything, I'm just sort of like the person in the middle that kind of hears about all this and does all this. But no, it's my team.
That's kind of amazing. And it's sort of fortunate that you created such a nice big outdoor space in so many breweries that I've spoken to ever since COVID happened. Once COVID hit, they've really started to emphasize and try to expand their outdoor seating as part of this.
Did you hear about the bubbles?
I heard about the bubbles. I saw pictures of the bubbles. I'm very disappointed that the bubbles were not here, only because I really wanted to sit in a bubble.
You wanted to sit in a bubble.
I wanted to sit in a bubble, but please explain the bubbles.
Well, the bubbles are little forms that go over tables. And they're not here right now because we're back in like the 80s or 90s, temperature-wise. And we tried fans, we tried everything, and you couldn't. We had the great idea for about 15 minutes. We were going to pump air conditioning into them, but then we realized that the purpose of the bubbles was to make sure that the person in bubble number 1 didn't breathe bubble number 2's air. Well, that wasn't going to work so well with air conditioning, so we kind of had to like toss that off to the side. Yeah, we learn a lot by doing and screwing it up and then fixing it. So that's why the bubbles aren't up now.
Gotcha. That makes perfect sense. But once people started coming out a little bit more, once society started to reopen a little bit, was your outdoor seating taken advantage of even
Yes.
more than you had originally anticipated?
It really was. I mean, initially it started with just like the soft furniture. So you'll see the groups of soft furniture around. And then we started adding tables. And then we added the 2-seaters. And there is a strong possibility that we will be able to pick up additional space soon.
Nice. That's amazing. That's obviously great for you.
Oh, we would love that.
But in terms of, I guess, where would you put it? Because you're in a sort of a strip mall, and I guess technically, as we're sitting out in the beer garden, we're behind the pet store that's next door to you.
Yes, we're behind the pet store, and we're behind the cabinet shop that's next door to me.
Gotcha. Somebody may not be here for much longer.
You know, I can't really say at this point, but there's a small rumor.
Okay, that's good. But that's great, and it's nice to see that the community can support craft beer enough to where you do have the ability to make these plans to grow.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that, I don't know, would you call it under-supported? Because there's still so many people out there that, because of what's going on now, you know, they don't come out as often as they did, or they're down here. They came down as snowbirds, but nobody knows they're here because they only go to the grocery store. They only do that. So I would say that probably, even as our social media is going up, we have a lot of, I'd say at least 50% of the people that come down, especially the snowbirds, don't necessarily use social media. They look at the magazines, you know, that come in their mailboxes. They go by word of mouth. And if their friends aren't going anywhere, if they're only going to the clubs, the private clubs, then I'd say at least 50% of the people have no idea that we're here. Maybe more. Because we still get people that come in every day and say, "Did you guys just open?" And we're like, no. I think I was down here last week. You weren't here, right? So I think it's a matter of making people aware of what it is and why you would want to be there.
That's amazing. And obviously one of the big ways that people get the word out is with distribution.
Yes.
And it seems like you are really starting to ramp up distribution, not just with kegs, which I feel have been going out for a little bit.
Kegs have been going out for a little bit.
But now you've got cans, and I know the cans are available at the very least at
Fresh Market.
Yeah.
They're also available at the 7-Eleven on Central. They are available at 2 or 3 of the ABC stores that are in the Naples, Fort Myers area.
Awesome.
We're working to get them into Total Wine, our distributor is. So we should be in there, I would say, within 3 to 4 weeks.
How difficult was that a decision to can in terms of not just the incredible investment that would require, but also, I guess, the amount of product that you have to pump through your system?
Funnily, I don't even think that's a word. Strangely enough,
there we go. That works.
The toughest decision was we can right now using a mobile canner because we don't have enough space within our facility. So to can, we have to close down. And they come in and they take all of the tap room and all of the room in between the kegs. And that's how we can. So literally you start at like 7, 8 in the morning and you run through, 20 some barrels. Mm-hmm. Ironheart Canning is who we currently use. They're a great mobile canner.
Nice.
And then you clean up really fast and you try and open the tap room by 4 or 5. It's crazy.
That's amazing.
But it's a lot of fun, and I think we look at it more as not even really a canning expense. We look at it as an advertising expense because the more places that we are and the more people that can identify our cans along with our logo, the more people that will then start putting it together.
And I think that's what a number of breweries have really started to understand, is that you don't get a lot of money from the can sales themselves. You get the money from the people that pick up the can and want to learn a little bit more.
That's it. The can's just like a starting point. The can, think of the can as a key, and you want them to bring the key to the door and open it up.
So what beers are actually in cans? Because we've got the beer menu in front of us. And
well,
we can figure out that Old Naples Blonde.
Old Naples Blonde, okay. Well, that's a story in itself.
Oh, I can't wait to hear this.
Well, okay, so our favorite name for Old Naples Blonde was Geezer Pleaser. And so when Old Naples Blonde first went out, would that have been probably 4 months ago? It went out as Geezer Pleaser. And we heard some people thought it was a great name, and some people obviously didn't like it. So we had to find a more palatable name, which Old Naples Blonde sounded perfect. But the cans that we just canned, we don't have any in the refrigerator right now, but on the bottom of them, not only do they say the date, but they also say Geezer Pleaser. Because we're very irreverent here.
Nice. So we've got the beer formerly known as Geezer Pleaser.
Yes, and then we've got Porpoise Party, which is the IPA. And then we've got Westtide Red Ale.
It's interesting. I can understand the blonde. I can understand the IPA. Very few breweries in this state have a red ale as a year-round can release.
This is true.
It's very strange. So I guess what was the purpose and the story behind that?
Well, the purpose and story behind that is that it actually pairs with a lot more food choices than people think that it does. And since very few people are currently offering it, we thought that it was a hole in the market and that we determined that we would go after it. We also try pretty hard to make sure that if we're going to go out into distribution with something, we really don't want to go out into distribution with something that is 100% in competition with the other crafts that are within our area, our immediate area. I just, if we don't have to, we just would rather not. There's plenty of people out there. There's no reason to try and take something that someone else has built. We'd rather build it ourselves.
That makes perfect sense. And talking about that, knowing the beers that are sort of released in this area, obviously everybody's got the IPA. That's almost
you have to, because an IPA is the number one thing asked for wherever you go.
Exactly. Got a couple blondes. I'm thinking, especially Fort Myers, kind of comes to mind. But I'm trying to think of the nearest red ale that gets released on a regular basis. Maybe Tocobaga? But that's all the way up in Tampa, and that's seasonal. Mm-hmm. It's actually kind of difficult to do.
So that's what we try and do. Every decision that we make is to make Riptide better. Mm-hmm. And to make it a better customer experience, to make sure that you can come here and get things that you can't get from other people, to make sure that when you come here, this is the epitome of the experience that you want to have.
That's perfect. And of course, when you come here, there are several beers on tap, and I'm curious as to which ones are kind of your favorites.
Oh, I'm Seafoam.
Your Seafoam.
I am Seafoam all the way.
That's your hazy. You're kind of New England.
Yes, I'm Seafoam all the way. I am an old Naples blonde.
Okay.
Well, actually, I guess I am an old Naples blonde. But I like the beer, too.
Exactly. That's
and
amazing. And I know I just had the lager, which is kind of your Vienna lager, which is beautifully crisp and nicely, just a touch on the sweet side. Got a little bit of hoppiness, which is kind of beautiful. So I really enjoyed kind of what that did. My wife is having the vanilla porter
That's
Royale,
true.
which is, I know she always loves the dark beers. She loves having that nice kind of hit of flavor. So it's got this, just a touch of the vanilla to give it that nice little rounded sweetness that works well with a strong, not too terribly strong, obviously being a porter.
Right.
But it's got that strong malt bill, kind of big flavors of cocoa and a little bit of coffee, and then having that vanilla come in is really fantastic.
One of the things that Lyndon tries to do specifically with the dark beers is he wants to make sure that you can hit the notes separately.
That makes sense.
And I think he does an excellent job with it. Of course, I'm Team Lyndon, so, you know.
But I do find it interesting. You know, obviously you said that you're going to be doing a cider program pretty soon.
Yeah, a cider and a seltzer program.
I was going to ask about the seltzers because that is the big thing.
Well, it is, and I have to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, they have, like, no carbs. They have very little sugar. I'm a seltzer person. I mean...
You're drinking a seltzer right now. There's no alcohol in it, but
No.
you're drinking a seltzer. And yeah, absolutely. You know, my wife and I, this is our cheat day because we've been doing keto for the past month.
Oh, so
And
this is your cheat day, yes.
This is our cheat day. And I mean, I hit the seltzer bandwagon hard. And
Yes.
so many people have told me, so many brewers have told me, they obviously love beer. It's, you know, near and dear to them. But they just drink seltzers because they don't have to worry about all the stuff. So
No.
you are going to do a seltzer
Yes,
program.
we are doing a seltzer.
Any details on that, or are we still a little ways off?
We're a little ways off. We will start testing out ciders and seltzers as soon as we have our production facility locked up. And we're not quite there yet. We did have a building that we were in due diligence under, but that didn't come to fruition. It was going to take too much of a build out to make it happen.
Gotcha. So you are looking at getting a production facility.
Oh, definitely.
Will this be a production only facility, or will you have
No, it will not.
tap
It will
room?
be a production facility and a tap room at the very least, although I would also like to have an event space.
Gotcha. Will you close the current space down and
Absolutely
move everything
not.
there? Okay.
No. If I want to own my backyard, which would be Naples, Fort Myers, possibly Tampa, you know, I wouldn't even mind going over on the other coast.
Hey, I would love that as well.
I definitely wouldn't be closing Riptides. We would be opening Riptides because it's a lifestyle, really. I think it really is a lifestyle. It's everybody's lifestyle. Find me somebody who doesn't want to just spend an hour or two even, someplace where you've got something good to drink, it's comfortable to sit, you've got really great people to talk to. I mean, I don't think there's anybody that would turn that down.
No, absolutely. And it's always been a viewpoint of mine that breweries really aren't bars per se, because I know my daughter is not the only child out here.
No, not at all. We have kids all the time.
And it seems like all the breweries in this area just start being child friendly.
Absolutely.
I think I've had one brewery turn a visit down because I would have my daughter with me.
Yeah, no, I mean, breweries are someplace that a family should be able to come. I mean, we've got a lot of outdoor games that are family friendly. No one's playing any tonight, but we have quite a few. Like I said, it's a neighborhood hangout. A neighborhood hangout, by definition, cannot exclude an entire group of people, and children would be a group of people.
No, absolutely.
And, you know, like if you're out with your child, do you want to have to think about, you know, do I have to get a sitter? Do I have to, like, drop them off at a friend's? Or can I just take them home and let's go to the brewery? Which is one of the reasons when we took over, we added root beer. They didn't have any type of thing on tap that was alcohol-free.
Interesting. Yeah, my daughter is enjoying the root beer. And that's made here in-house.
Actually, I believe our root beer comes from Anchor Lab.
Interesting.
No, we do not make... We don't have the space to make it. I'd love to say that we made it in-house, but we don't.
But it's still made here in Southwest Florida.
It is made in Southwest
and
Florida,
it's
yes.
nice to know that the region is starting to boom so much and that Riptide is going to be a bigger part of that.
Well, thank you.
Well, thank you as well. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was great.
So if their plans come to fruition, you'll be able to see Riptide Brewing in most places in the state, hopefully sooner rather than later, because they had some amazing stuff. And I will definitely say that if you read the review on floridabeerblog.com right now, you'll be able to see some of the beers that I sampled, including one of the best wee heavies that I have ever had. The Florida Beer Podcast is a production of floridabeerblog.com. You can find us anytime at floridabeerblog.com, floridabeermedia.com, and floridabeerpodcast.com. We are also a very proud part of the Florida Podcast Network. And what I want you to do is to subscribe to as many Florida Podcast Network shows as you can. There's new ones that are coming out. Old ones are still doing really good, and if you want information on all of those, all you have to do is to go onto Facebook, follow FPN Insiders. It's a closed, members-only group where you can find out new information for shows that are coming to the network, chat with other fans, tell them about your favorite episodes, tell them about your favorite breweries, tell them someplace that you went that you thought was really cool. We'll also have more information and details on contests and so on from there. So that's FPN Insiders on Facebook. If you want to follow us, please do so. We are on Facebook as well at FL Beer Blog. We're on Instagram and Twitter at Florida Beer Blog. Or you can email us directly at floridabeerblog@gmail.com. Our intro announcer is Jeff Brozovich. Field producer is Steve Piccola. Executive producer and Grand High Poobah is Jemmy Lagonier. So once again, make sure to like us, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to our social media channels, give us a nice, juicy 5-star review. Make sure to carve it into the tree bark of a tree that you like that's somewhere in a public park, and then do not mention that you heard that from me when you get arrested. I know nothing. I disavow any knowledge of having said what I just said. I didn't say it at all. Check back next week. We've got a really cool interview with a brewery that has been about 100 years in the making. Can't wait to share that with all of you. So thank you so much for listening, and drink Florida Craft.